A mother's desperate faith, the story of the Syrophoenician woman. She was an outsider. A woman from a pagan land. She had no right to approach a Jewish teacher. No reason to expect mercy. No claim to the promises of Israel. And yet, she came. She fought through the barriers of tradition. She refused to accept silence as an answer. She knelt before the feet of the Messiah, and she begged. She didn't ask for wealth. She didn't seek honor. She wanted one thing, her daughter's deliverance. She was tested. Challenged. Even dismissed. But she would not be denied. And with one sentence, one declaration of relentless faith, she changed everything. What did she say? And why did Jesus respond in a way that shocked everyone around him? The story of the Syrophoenician woman is more than a miracle, it is a lesson in persistence, humility, and the faith that moves mountains. Welcome to Mindful Musing, a journey with God, where faith comes alive, and every story reminds us that the God of yesterday is still the God of today. Here, we dive deep into the untold wonders of Scripture, immersive, emotional, powerful. Stories that stir your spirit, ignite your faith, and draw you closer to the heart of God. Subscribe now and join the journey, as we step into one of the most astonishing moments in all of biblical history. She was an outsider. An outcast. Yet, when her daughter's life was at stake, she refused to accept silence as an answer. With unwavering determination, she challenged the Son of God himself, until he could no longer deny her faith. The story of the Syrophoenician woman is one of the most unexpected and bold encounters in the New Testament. She was a Gentile, someone outside of Israel's chosen people, yet she dared to approach Jesus, desperate for a miracle. When he seemingly rejected her, she did not back down. Instead, she turned rejection into an act of faith so powerful that Jesus changed his response. This story is raw, unfiltered, and deeply human, a mother battling cultural barriers, prejudice, and even divine silence, simply because she refused to let her daughter remain tormented. It is a lesson not just in persistence, but in radical faith that refuses to be ignored. The sun dipped low over the coastal city of Tyre, casting long shadows against the worn stone streets. The scent of salt hung thick in the air, carried by the restless breeze of the Mediterranean. The marketplace bustled with merchants calling out their wares, the cries of street children weaving through the chatter of tired workers. But amidst the noise, one woman stood alone, eyes fixed on the horizon, waiting. She had heard the rumors. The whispers of a man unlike any other. A healer. A prophet. A miracle worker. Some said he was the Messiah. Others scoffed, dismissing him as another wandering teacher. But she did not care for titles or debates, she only cared about her daughter. For years, her child had suffered. Not from sickness, not from a wound that could be dressed and healed, but something far worse. An affliction of the spirit. Unseen, unknowable, uncontrollable. Her daughter's body would twist in agony, her voice screaming in a language no one understood, as if darkness itself had clawed its way into her fragile mind. The priests of her people had done nothing. The physicians of the city had whispered among themselves, afraid. They called her daughter cursed. They called her mother helpless. But she refused to accept that. If this Jewish prophet had healed others, if he had made the blind see, if he had cast demons into the abyss, then he would heal her daughter. She gathered her robes and walked toward the city gate. To the Israelites, she was a Canaanite, a woman whose ancestors had been enemies of their people for generations. Her nation did not worship the God of Abraham. Her city bowed to gods carved in stone, gods who never listened. And yet, here she was, seeking mercy from the very faith she had been told was not for her. She knew the dangers. The Jews had no dealings with her people. A woman alone had even less standing among them. But desperation does not obey tradition. A mother's love does not bow to division. So when she learned that Jesus had entered the region, she ran. Her feet pounded against the ground as she pushed through the gathered crowds. The voices around her blurred into nothing but static, drowned beneath the sound of her own pulse hammering in her ears. Her heart raced, not from fear, but from determination. Then, she saw him. He was walking, surrounded by his disciples, speaking quietly among them. He did not look like the powerful rulers her people had imagined gods to be. He was a man. But even from a distance, there was something in him, something unshakable, something vast, something that made the very air seem to hold its breath. She knew, with the force of certainty, that he was her only hope. She dropped to her knees. "Lord, Son of David," she cried, her voice raw with desperation. The sound split through the air, a plea from a place deeper than words. The crowd stopped. The disciples turned, confusion flickering in their eyes. Some of them frowned, whispering among themselves. She could hear their dismissive tone, their impatience. She was not Jewish. She had no right to approach him. Still, she begged. "Have mercy on me. My daughter is suffering terribly from demon possession." She waited, her breath held in her chest, her hands trembling at her sides. But Jesus did not answer her. The weight of his silence fell upon her like stone. He had heard her, there was no doubt. He had turned his gaze toward her, met her eyes, seen her pain. And yet, he did not speak. He did not move. The disciples stepped forward, their expressions clouded with irritation. "Send her away," one of them muttered. "She keeps crying out after us." Another waved her off, as if she were nothing more than a nuisance, a beggar disrupting their journey. Her stomach twisted, but she did not move. She had heard no. She had endured rejection before. But there was something different about this silence. It was not the silence of indifference, it was the silence of a moment before revelation. Then, Jesus spoke. "I was sent only to the lost sheep of Israel," he said. The word struck like ice, cold, sharp, undeniable. She was not one of them. She was not a daughter of Israel. She had no claim to the promises of their God, no right to call upon his mercy. And yet, she refused to accept it. She stepped forward, closer to him. Her knees hit the earth, her hands gripping the ground, her entire being bowed low before him. "Lord, help me," she pleaded. Her voice was stripped of everything, of pride, of propriety, of hesitation. It was raw, naked in its truth. It was the cry of a mother who refused to let go. Then, he answered her again. "It is not right to take the children's bread and toss it to the dogs." The words should have crushed her. They should have ended everything. But she did not flinch. She had expected rejection. She had expected dismissal. What she had not expected was the metaphor, a test hidden beneath his words. So she answered him with a truth that stunned the heavens. "Yes, Lord, but even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from their master's table." She did not argue her position. She did not defend her worth. She simply accepted what was said, and then turned it into faith. She believed that even the smallest piece of his mercy was enough. She believed that even the scraps of his power could heal. And in that moment, everything changed. Faith that moves mountains. Jesus looked at her, really looked at her. And he smiled. "Woman, you have great faith. Your request is granted." The words rippled through the air like thunder. The crowd stared in stunned silence. The disciples exchanged glances, understanding dawning in their eyes. And somewhere, miles away, unseen, a little girl sat up in bed. Her breathing steady. Her mind quiet. Her body whole. The demon was gone. Her mother turned, the weight of years of desperation lifting off her shoulders. She had won, not by force, not by status, but by faith that refused to break. She walked away, her steps light with victory. Her daughter was free. The Syrophoenician woman remains one of the boldest figures in Scripture, a Gentile who challenged divine silence, who stood firm against rejection, who proved that faith crosses all boundaries. Her story is proof that persistence moves the hand of God. She was not meant to be included in history. And yet, her faith made sure she would never be forgotten. The marketplace hummed with the familiar sounds of trade and chatter, but the woman did not hear them. Not really. Her mind was locked on a singular thought, a single hope that refused to fade. She had found him. She had cried out to him. But he had said nothing. Jesus, the healer, the prophet, the miracle worker, had turned to her but did not speak. The weight of it settled in her chest, pressing down with the force of rejection. Was this what she had come all this way for? Silence. Dismissal. After all the rumors, after all the prayers whispered into the cold night air, was this how it was going to end? The disciples looked at her with irritation, their whispered conversations floating just within reach. She keeps crying out after us. Send her away. They wanted her gone. She was a nuisance, just another beggar disrupting their journey. She could feel their impatience, their disapproval pressing against her skin. But she refused to leave. She had spent years fighting the unseen torment writhing inside her daughter. She had spent years seeking a cure. She would not give up now. She knew desperation. She understood rejection. But she also understood faith. She waited, not moving, not backing down, her breath shallow, her body still. Then, finally, Jesus spoke. A response that cuts deep. I was sent only to the lost sheep of Israel. His words were direct. Clear. Unmistakable. She was not Israelite, she was a foreigner. She was not one of the chosen, she was an outsider. By every tradition, every law, every expectation, she had no right to ask for his help. And yet, she still did. Her heart pounded. She felt the sting of rejection, but she did not move. She had expected this. Expected the walls placed between her and the miracles she sought. Expected to be told she was unworthy. And yet, even knowing all of this, she had still come. Because a mother does not care for barriers when her child is suffering. A mother does not accept silence when there is still hope. She stepped forward, dropping to her knees. Lord, help me. The words slipped from her lips, stripped of everything, of pride, of hesitation, of restraint. It was pure need, laid bare at his feet. She did not care that the disciples scowled at her persistence. She did not care that the crowd whispered about why she was still here. Her daughter was still suffering. And until she was healed, she would not leave. Jesus looked at her. The pause in the air felt like a storm gathering strength. Then, he answered her again. It is not right to take the children's bread and toss it to the dogs. The words hit like stone, sharp and final. Silence settled over the crowd. The disciples exchanged glances, waiting to see how she would react. Would she leave now? Would she understand what he was saying, that the blessings he carried were not meant for her people? But she did not react in anger. She did not cry out in protest. Instead, she smiled. Her eyes lifted to meet his, filled with something new, not desperation, not sorrow, but bold certainty. Yes, Lord, she said, her voice steady, unshaken. But even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from their master's table. The word sent a shock through the gathering. The disciples froze, surprised by her response, by her understanding of what had just been said. She did not argue that she was a child of Israel. She did not demand to be treated like one. She simply accepted her place, and then turned it into an advantage. She understood the metaphor. And instead of being offended by it, she used it. Yes, she was not part of Israel. Yes, she was an outsider. But even outsiders could receive crumbs from the master's table. She believed that the smallest piece of his power was enough. She believed that even crumbs could bring a miracle. Her faith was not demanding, it was humble. But it was also unbreakable. The crowd held its breath, waiting for his response. Then, Jesus smiled. "This great faith moves heaven. Woman," he said, his voice filled with something new, something bright, powerful, undeniable. "You have great faith. Your request is granted." The words split the air like thunder. The disciples stared in disbelief. The people murmured among themselves, trying to grasp what had just happened. Jesus had just changed his answer. He had gone from silence to acknowledgement. From dismissal to acceptance. From barriers to miracles. And somewhere, miles away, a little girl sat up in bed. Her breathing steady. Her body whole. Her mind free. The demon was gone. Her mother did not need confirmation. She did not need to see the miracle unfold before her. She knew it had happened the moment Jesus had spoken. She rose, her steps light with victory, her heart filled with the knowledge that faith had won. And she left, not as a rejected outsider, but as a mother victorious. The Syrophoenician woman's story is one of the most unexpected moments in Scripture. She defied the silence. She defied the rejection. She defied the limitations placed upon her. And through her unyielding faith, she changed everything. She walked away knowing one truth: faith is not about privilege or status. Faith is about persistence, about refusing to let go. And because of her story, that truth echoes throughout time. The marketplace had returned to its usual rhythm, merchants bartering, children laughing, the hum of voices weaving through the warm Mediterranean air. But she was frozen in time. The words still echoed in her mind, reverberating in her chest like thunder. "It is not right to take the children's bread and toss it to the dogs." She had expected rejection. She had expected dismissal. What she had not expected was this. Not a cold refusal. Not a simple "no." But a metaphor, a challenge hidden beneath the words, like a locked door with a key waiting to be found. She looked up at him, and for the first time, she truly saw him. His eyes held no malice. No cruelty. There was something else, something deeper. The crowd had heard his words and assumed they were final. The disciples shifted in discomfort, uneasy with the exchange. But she understood what was really happening. Jesus had not turned away. He had not walked past her, ignoring her entirely. He had engaged her. And that was all she needed. Her heart pounded in her chest as she took a breath that felt like the edge of something greater. Her entire life, she had known how the world saw her. She was a Gentile. She was a woman. She was someone who had no place in Israel's story. But was faith bound by bloodlines? Did mercy belong only to those within a chosen circle? No. She would not accept that. If he spoke in metaphors, then so would she. She lifted her eyes, fire burning behind them, and spoke words that would shake history. "Yes, Lord," she said. "But even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from their master's table." A ripple passed through the crowd. The disciples turned, eyes wide with shock. The tension that had hung in the air shifted, not broken, but transformed. She had not argued. She had not begged again. She had simply used his own words to prove her faith. She was not offended by the metaphor. She accepted it. But in that acceptance, she flipped the meaning on its head. If the blessings of Israel were like bread, if those outside the chosen people were like dogs, then even a crumb from the master's table would be enough to heal her daughter. She was not asking for a feast, not demanding what was meant for Israel. She only wanted what was left over. And she believed, with all her heart, that even the smallest piece of his power could change everything. The crowd held its breath. The woman's words still lingered, their truth undeniable. And then, Jesus smiled. Something shifted in his presence. A warmth spread through the air, a silent acknowledgement of what had just happened. She had proven herself, not by her lineage, not by entitlement, but by faith that refused to bend under rejection. Jesus' voice rang with authority, with power, with undeniable recognition. "Woman, you have great faith." The words were a declaration. A pronouncement. A victory. Her faith had not gone unnoticed. Her desperation had not been dismissed. "Your request is granted." At that very moment, miles away, unseen by the crowd, something shifted in her home. Her daughter, once tormented, once lost to darkness, sat up in bed. The suffocating grip that had held her spirit was gone. The nightmare had ended. The demon had fled. Her mind was whole. She looked around, blinking in the dim candlelight, at peace for the first time in years. The mother rose to her feet. The weight of years of pleading, fighting, breaking beneath rejection, was gone. She had won. Not by force. Not by demand. But by faith that could not be ignored. She turned, walking away with a lightness in her step, knowing. Her daughter was free. The victory was hers. And nothing could take it away. The mother rose to her feet. The weight of years of pleading, fighting, breaking beneath rejection, was gone. She had won. Not by force. Not by demand. But by faith that could not be ignored. She turned, walking away with a lightness in her step, knowing. Her daughter was free. The victory was hers. And nothing could take it away. The crowd watched in stunned silence. Jesus had praised her. Not dismissed her. Not sent her away. Not ignored her as his disciples had suggested. Instead, he had lifted her up with words that would shake generations to come. "Woman, you have great faith. Your request is granted." She had asked for crumbs. She had received a feast. She did not demand privilege, she declared belief. And that belief changed everything. Though she had not seen her daughter yet, she knew the miracle had already taken place. Faith did not wait for proof. Faith believed before it saw. She lifted herself from the dust, her robe stained with the earth she had knelt upon. The tension that had gripped her heart for so many years, the fear, the desperation, the helplessness, was gone. Her daughter was healed. She was free. Her steps were light with victory as she turned away. But as she left, the whispers began. The disciples had stood beside Jesus for months, witnessing his miracles, hearing his teachings. But this moment was different. This was not another Israelite coming in faith. This was a Gentile woman. An outsider. Someone excluded from the promises of Israel. And yet, she had received exactly what she asked for. Not because of lineage. Not because of ritual. Not because of tradition. But because her faith was relentless. It defied barriers, social expectations, and silence. Some of them exchanged glances, as if realizing that this encounter meant something far greater than a single miracle. Jesus had not ignored her because she was Gentile, he had tested her faith to reveal its strength. And he had rewarded it. This moment marked something new in Jesus' ministry. The boundaries that had separated the chosen people from outsiders were beginning to crack. This woman's faith had crossed the invisible line between those who were included and those who were not. She proved that belief was more powerful than bloodline. And because of her, the world would soon see that Jesus' mission was not just for Israel, it was for everyone. As she walked back to her home, the miracle was already unfolding in ways she could not yet see. Her daughter, once tormented, screaming, suffering, now sat peacefully, untouched by darkness. The neighbors who had once whispered behind her back, calling her cursed, now stood in awe. Her story would spread. Her victory would be told and retold. And though her name would never be recorded, her act of faith would become immortal. A mother who refused to accept silence. A woman who challenged Jesus himself. A Gentile who proved that faith transcends barriers. The story of the Syrophoenician woman did not end when she left Jesus. It echoed. It changed perceptions. It reshaped history. For centuries, faith had been woven into the fabric of Israel, passed down through bloodlines, guarded within their sacred traditions. Outsiders, Gentiles, had been considered separate, standing on the edges of promise but never stepping fully inside. But this woman? She stepped in anyway. Her plea had not just been for her daughter, it had been a declaration of a truth that would not be silenced. Faith knows no borders. Faith does not wait for permission. Faith takes hold of God and refuses to let go. As she returned home, her story began to spread. At first, whispers, neighbors speaking of the child who was once tormented and was now healed. The same people who had once pitied and scorned her now marveled. How did it happen? What did she say? You mean, the Jewish prophet answered her. She did not preach, did not shout it from rooftops. But she did not hide it either. Her truth, her faith, spoke for itself. Her daughter, once bound by unseen horrors, now danced in the streets. And little by little, people began to believe that perhaps, this Jesus was unlike any other. But the woman's faith did not just affect her people, it affected Jesus' own disciples. As they continued their journey with him, this moment lingered in their minds. Some had dismissed her when she first arrived, suggested that she be sent away. And yet, her persistence had led to an encounter that showed them something new. Jesus had tested her. Jesus had challenged her faith. And in the end, Jesus had welcomed her. She had broken through a belief that only certain people were deserving of miracles. And soon, they would see Jesus extend that same mercy to many others beyond Israel, a shift that would eventually turn the entire world toward him. Though her name was never recorded in Scripture, her act of faith was immortalized. She was supposed to be forgotten. She was supposed to be excluded. And yet, centuries later, we still speak of her words, the words that challenged the Messiah himself and turned rejection into one of the greatest declarations of faith in history. The Syrophoenician woman proved that faith is not about belonging to a select group, it is about believing with unshakable certainty. And because of her, doors that had once been closed were opened forever. The Syrophoenician woman was supposed to be forgotten, just another outsider in the background of history. But her faith refused to be erased. She was dismissed, ignored, told she did not belong. And yet, with just one sentence, she challenged everything, expectations, cultural norms, and even the divine silence of the Messiah himself. Her story is not just ancient history, it is a declaration of bold, relentless faith that still speaks to us today. She teaches us that faith does not wait for permission. Faith pushes past obstacles. Faith takes hold of God and does not let go. And because of that, she changed everything. Her story is not just a miracle, it is a call to action for all of us. How often do we give up when things seem impossible? Do we accept silence as the final answer, or do we persist in faith? Are we ready to challenge doubt the way she did? She fought past rejection. She refused to back down. And because of her, we know that faith is not about status, privilege, or bloodline, it is about belief that does not waver. Pray boldly, ask for more than crumbs and expect miracles. Hold on to faith, even when the answer seems distant. Break barriers, never assume you're not worthy of God's mercy. Challenge doubt, when the world says no, let faith say yes. If this story moved you, share it. Inspire someone who needs to hear this today.